The 1920s was an era of both triumph and tragedy. Prior to the 20s, alcoholism was considered the cause of all evils in society. Societies of women triumphed in the ratification of the 18th Amendment, Prohibition. Although Prohibition promised to prevent all sins upon its ratification, crime still prevailed, and the dry period eventually ended. The Women's Christian Temperance Union, also known as the WCTU, was created in 1874. It consisted of women who were concerned with the problems in society that were associated with alcohol and alcoholism. They believed that alcohol contributed to issues such as domestic violence and poverty. They pushed for prohibition at both the local and national levels. Kansas was the first state to prohibit alcohol in its constitution. With states and foreign countries' increased hostility towards saloons and alcohol, the Senate passed the 18th Amendment on December 18, 1917. On January 16, 1919, Wyoming became the 36th and final state necessary for the three-quarters majority to ratify an amendment. The 18th Amendment prohibited the sale of manufactured intoxicating liquids in the United States and all of its territories. Exportation and transportation of these liquids was banned as well. The Volstead Act, commonly known as the National Prohibition Act of 1919, enforced the new Prohibition Amendment. It prohibited any possession of alcohol. Federal enforcement officers would often organize raids in nightclubs. It was the government's job to make sure that people were obeying the new amendment.
That you want me to build, baby? Have you got any dragons that you want to have killed, baby? I'll get into my 7-league boots, I'll get into my bulletproof suits, I'll get out my revolver that shoots, and rat-a-tat-tat, down they'll go.
Although it seemed that Prohibition was a step toward a reformed society, it just led to an intense competition among criminal entrepreneurs. Bootlegging became popular due to the 18th Amendment's ban on the manufacturing and sales of liquor. Bootlegging led to the rise of organized crime syndicates that controlled operations from production to distribution to restaurants and speakeasies. Speakeasies were illicit establishments providing alcoholic beverages. These establishments reached an apex after the 18th Amendment took effect. Alcohol was officially illegal during Prohibition. The public was eager to drink, just for the sake of breaking the new law. The business of running speakeasies was so lucrative that such establishments continued to flourish throughout the nation. In major cities, speakeasies were often elaborate establishments offering food, live bands, and floor shows. The police forces were corrupt and were commonly bribed by speakeasy operators. The operators wanted the police to ignore them and to forewarn them of any planned raid. These organizations expanded the organized crime network. Crime bosses, such as Al Capone, believed they were businessmen and fed the public needs. Crime bosses and their gangs made millions of dollars through this illegal alcohol ring. Prohibition overburdened the criminal justice system and undermined respect for the nation's law. The 18th Amendment was a failed national experiment which sought to eliminate the consumption of intoxicating liquors. It seemed a promising reform in the beginning, but became a major disappointment in our nation's history. Though consumption was reduced, federal and state law enforcement officials could not prevent the illegal manufacture and sale of moonshine. Even women, as a bloc of voters and activists, became pivotal in the effort to repeal the 18th Amendment. In their opinion, Prohibition was morally corrupting families, women, and children. The 21st Amendment was proposed by the United States Congress and was the only instance in which an amendment superseded another. The failure of the federal government to restrict the consumption of alcohol leaves room in checks and balances for individual states, counties, and towns to restrict or prohibit alcohol. Many states remained dry even after the ratification of the 21st Amendment. The main triumph of Prohibition was that everyday women succeeded in getting the amendment passed. The alcohol boom helped get the economy out of recession based on taxes and sales. The money coming in from sales of alcohol was positive, However, it was also negative because it led to speakeasies, organized crime, and a lack of respect for law and order. In the end, Prohibition worked out because America realized its mistake and worked almost as hard to pass the 21st Amendment as they had the 18th. Nevertheless, could you ever close Pandora's box? Can you put the genie back in the bottle? Could the attitudes underlying the rise of speakeasies, Capone, and others like him ever be undone? Did a movement intended to save America's innocence ironically contribute to the loss of innocence? That is the real tragedy.
Here's the good old whiskey, drink it down, drink it down. Here's the good old whiskey, drink it down, drink it down.